It may seem from the stories that I started writing, at least some of them, after the pandemic, which was not the case. A story like Rat Island, which is one of the stories that you mentioned that could have been a novel, was actually written long before that. But at the end of that story, we were well into the pandemic. And well into the story, also the riot on Capitol Hill had happened. So it seems like those events inspired stories like that. But that story in particular was more inspired by the escape from Saigon in Vietnam in 1975, the situation with all these people on the rooftop of the American embassy in Rat Island. It's a lot of rich people on a roof of a skyscraper downtown LA, escaping a city where everything is breaking down, where law, order of law is no longer working. And so it was sort of what could have happened after the riot on Capitol Hill, that the fact that even in what we like to think of as the world's most solid democracy and rule of law is just, a thin layer on society and on civilization, and it is something that we have to restore and secure every day. It's not there automatically, and I think that is the message of some of the stories in Power. For me, it was actually more inspired probably by the fact that when I was a young man, I traveled in Yugoslavia, which at the time was a fully functioning society and country. They had actually merged the different populations, so the Croats and the Serbs and the Bosnians. So it wasn't like it had to be split, but then something happened, and what happens is what we see, I think, in the world today, that there are political currencies, of course, that is driving this, but there are also individuals, demagogues, who can speak to our bad sides, our nationalistic sides in this case. And that's what happened in Yugoslavia. And then a few years later, I'm traveling through the same country. This time it's ripped apart by a civil war. And you realize that, and it happened so quickly. I mean, in many ways, Slobodan Milosevic, he was in power and started his speeches on TV, which was, the important medium to drive his policies and his rhetoric. It happened in 6 months, more or less. A country that's been building since the Second World War, you can rip that apart in 6 months. And in the United States, if the riot on Capitol Hill had succeeded, let's say Trump had stayed in power, what would have happened? It takes so little. So that is, if there is a political agenda in these short stories about power, it's not necessarily a left side or right side story there or agenda. It's just the agenda to ask the question, how solid are these societies that we have built, what can they stand? And nowadays, we of course we see that danger is looming everywhere, that things that we take for granted will have changed overnight.